Welcome and thanks for joining us wherever you are. My name is Holta Loku and I'm excited to be launching Diversity in Leadership, a new series of Montresor's General Counselling podcast. As part of my day job, I'm really lucky to work with talented lawyers from a range of different backgrounds. In this series, we'll be sharing their stories and career insights with the hope of inspiring lawyers at all levels to consider and attain leadership roles, as well as exploring practical initiatives that can drive impactful and lasting change. In each episode, I'll be joined by a law firm partner and a senior lawyer from the in-house world. If you like what you hear, please click subscribe and like and share on LinkedIn. For this special launch episode on International Women's Day, we're joined by two lawyers at the absolute top of their profession. From the in-house world, we'll be hearing from Lauren Livingston, the General Counsel of global private equity house CVC Capital Partners. Lauren joined CVC back in 2007 and has led the legal team since 2015. She's an active member of the firm's committees, including their D&I committee, and she's been recognized as a rising star in the GC Power List. She's also launched a personal blog at trulyalive.com, which was brilliant, so make sure to check that out. And on the private practice side, we're joined by Seema Shah, a funds partner at Simpson Thacher. Seema began her career at Clifford Chance and joined Simpson Thacher in 2013. She has been instrumental in helping the firm develop one of, if not the leading funds practice in the city, which was recognized by her elevation to partnership in 2016 at a firm where the bar is incredibly high. She has led international teams in the private fund space and advised on countless multi-billion-pound deals. Thank you both so much for joining us on our first episode. To kick things off, let's talk about your paths into leadership roles. Lauren, you seem to have the job that every associate who wants to move in-house seems to want. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you got there?
Of course, Walter. Hi, and thank you for that introduction. Well, I'll start with how I got here, because I think that there's some lessons and stories in it. I mean, I was an associate at Herbie's back in the day, and I loved the thrill of corporate M&A life. But I was always deeply frustrated because I didn't know why the clients were doing what they were doing. And there isn't time at 3 a.m. to ask. So I was fascinated by private equity because it still had the thrill of M&A, but I wanted to go client side so that I could really understand the why as well as the how. So I joined them back in 2007, as you say. And then really it's a career of opportunity, finding documents, reading documents, saying, hey, who do I give comments to, then being invited into the right meeting. So just sort of following my curiosity to grow and to do more funds work, which is how I come to work with Seema and the funds team a lot. And then in 2015, taking over the leadership role to head up the legal team for Capital Partners. So yeah, I think for me, it's just been following my nose of curiosity and being willing to do things outside my comfort zone.
Mm. And Seema, you've followed a different path and built your career in private practice. Can you tell us a bit more about your journey in becoming a partner in one of the most profitable law firms in the world?
Sure. So again, thank you for the introduction. And it's great to be here on this podcast. So I started my career, as you said, as a trainee in Clifford Chance back in 2004. I qualified into the funds team there a couple of years later. And I really enjoyed it there. I mean, the team had a great reputation, lovely people, many of whom I'm still in touch with, and really great work. So I was very happy there until the head of our team, Jason Glover, announced that he was leaving to come to Simpson Thacher at the end of 2010. I probably would have joined straight away, but then a very interesting opportunity came up to go on secondment to Apax Partners. So I actually started my secondment there in 2011, and that was to act as fundraising counsel in-house for their 8th fund, which they were raising at the time. And that ended up lasting a couple of years until that fundraising was over. So I guess in some ways, I got the in-house insight and all the things that Lauren was talking about, a real appreciation of the why, the commercial drivers, what people in-house really valued from their external counsel. And I had a really great experience there. And then at the end of 2013, I thought long and hard about, do I stay in-house or do I go back to private practice? And for me, it was really a case of, given my speciality as a funds lawyer, which I think is very different from M&A, where can I add value and the most commercial insight that I can? And I think the one thing I'd seen was that having an insight into not only how your own firm does things, but an insight into how a large cross-section of clients' peer group do things, and how the market's shaping up, and how people are progressing, where innovation lies, where the future lies. I thought that was a way that as an external lawyer, I could really add value to the clients I worked with. And so I decided to capitalize on that, and I couldn't think of a better platform than Simpson Thacher to do that with. So I joined here in 2013, and I've worked with people like Lauren and other leading private equity firms since then. And I became a partner in 2016, actually just 10 days before I went on maternity leave with my first son. So that was great. And now my job involves leading large teams of lawyers, sometimes up to 20, 25 lawyers on really large fundraisings, and teaching those teams, mentoring those teams, and acting as a conciliary and a sounding board to people like Lauren at the top private equity firms.
And have you seen the legal landscape change over the last 10 years in terms of representation?
So maybe if I take that one, because I guess I have more of an insight into the purely legal landscape. I mean, I think just from my own experience, when I first started working over 15 years ago, I had no female clients. I remember being taken to lunches, dinners, meetings, and I would be the only woman in the room. And I often felt that I had really very little in common with the people that I was dealing with. And I definitely think that's changing. Just to give you a snapshot, 49% of Simpson Thacher's associates are women at this point in time. And so I think there's definitely been progress in private practice. And just anecdotally, in-house, a lot more of my clients are women these days. And I think definitely in legal roles in private equity and investor relations roles in private equity, the female representation has gone up significantly. But there's obviously still a lot of growth needed on the actual business side and on the transactional side. And the other change I think I'd flag is that, at least what I've noticed, that there's been more of a movement onwards from a focus on diversity to a focus on inclusion. So less about encouraging differences in order to meet quotas and targets, and more about ensuring that every single individual is appreciated for who they are and feels that they belong in the environment, and feels comfortable and supported to be who they are and succeed on that basis.
And in terms of challenges that you faced as a female lawyer, I know that you mentioned briefly there, Seema, what kind of challenges have you faced and have you overcome them?
Shall I take that one, perhaps? I actually don't know whether being female was ever a challenge. I was nearly always the only woman in a room up until relatively recently, the last 4 or 5 years. So to your point, Seema, the female representation has risen, especially in leadership roles. I actually think my age was a bigger predicament. I also look a little younger than I am, so I just look like this young girl who's at the table, and why is she speaking? So I actually think that had a greater impact. But as one male colleague once said to me, at least everyone remembers you, Lauren, and the sea of suits, and I tend to wear bright colors. So I think that I don't think being female was a problem. I think a bigger issue for me personally was perhaps role models. In the law firm, there were a number of female partners in corporate M&A, but not many at the time I was there. And then I came into a leading private equity house, which at the time was predominantly guys. And yeah, I've had to search for role models or create my own path, which actually I've enjoyed, and it's given me a lot of freedom to be who I want to be. And to your point, Seema, inclusivity, I can very much be myself at CVC and in all the colours that comes. But yeah, I think female representation in leadership is growing now, and is a time. That's why I'm here. This is wildly outside my comfort zone doing this, but I'm here because I think it's really important that people like Seema and I start speaking and showing that you can be a female leader. And it's, yes, there are some challenges, but there's also a great amount of opportunity to doing it as well.
And what are the initiatives or developments that have been particularly successful, in your opinion, to increase representation? Perhaps, Seema, you may add some light on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's been a big focus of ours in private practice. I think law firms are very cognizant of the issues and very proactive in trying to deal with them. I think one of the initiatives that we feel has had a big impact internally is that we've implemented an internal review process. So that's a process undertaken by the head of each practice group and head of each office, where they actually sit down and go through every associate with a focus on female associates, to ensure that they are actually getting the right opportunities, that they're staffed on the right things, that they have the right exposure, and doing that from a very junior level so that those people's career trajectories are built up in the right way and that they're given the maximum opportunity to succeed. Because I think, as I said, there is a large female intake, at least in private practice in the law, and the real challenge is to see that filter through to promotions at partnership level and also in terms of leadership positions at the firm. So there's that. And I also think that initiatives that are targeted at both women and men can work really well. And that goes back to my inclusivity point. So, for example, shared parental leave, or even little things like we've had a number of men in the office talk about wanting to leave at 5 to pick up children from nursery and then log back in later. And I think that's so incredibly helpful because it just puts men and women on equal footing. And then it's no longer a woman's issue. It's just a personal issue that could apply to anybody.
Absolutely.
I think I'd just add two things to that, Seema, from my perspective. I would rather people were motivated by honey than vinegar, but I have seen the benefit of targets, because I think you can't manage what you can't measure. And whilst no woman ever wants to be promoted or hired because she fills a quota, I think it creates a focus and an intentionality around increasing the number of women. My team, I was trying to work this out this morning, I think we're 60-40 women. And there are a number of female leaders in my business. I also think supporting not just women, all people with the inner work to have the self-confidence to put themselves forward, to not wait to be asked. I mean, I think we may come to talk about mentors, but one of the things my biggest mentor ever said was seek forgiveness, not permission. And I think, so one of the things we did at CVC was we actually had RADA Business School come in and give us training on how to present and how to be present at meetings and how to speak, and that massively, I saw a big rise in confidence in people at the firm after that training.
Over the next 5 years, what are we heading for? What would good look like in terms of continuing to improve representation? Lauren?
I would love to see more women leaders. There just aren't enough. Look at the FTSE. Look at private, look anywhere, look at any business. There's some that have greater. I'm a big champion of good leaders, whatever gender you are. And so I think supporting the rising middle to keep going. I think especially as women in our 30s, where I have a child, I actually went to maternity leave shortly after becoming General Counsel as well, so it's quite interesting. But then you have to come back and reintegrate a family life and a busy career, and we need to support women to keep going through that, because it's after that normally the senior leadership roles come later in your 30s and your early 40s. So I think good looks like that continuing and that flow continuing, and more female leaders getting those positions. I don't know what you think, Seema.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think we're in a slightly different place in private practice than you are in private equity, in that we do attract a large number of women into the profession in the first place. And so the real challenge is, how do you motivate and retain those people and show them that actually being a partner, being in a leadership position is actually a viable strategy for them? And from my own personal perspective, I think the fact that I was on that trajectory and I felt that it was achievable was absolutely instrumental in me coming back to work after having children. And I think it's really sad that I think a lot of women just filter themselves out of the profession at an earlier stage because they don't have role models and because they just don't see how they can have it all. And they just take themselves out of the picture, when in reality, if you have a job that's worth going back for, you're so much more likely to go back and do that once you have a family.
Yeah. I mean, and it's something that's a lot of the associates that we speak to say exactly the same thing. So I think it's a very relevant issue. In terms of, I guess, your own kind of careers, who are the people that you've looked up to who, have made the most impact in your careers? Perhaps, Lauren, you can tell us more about that.
Well, interestingly, it's a man, a gentleman called Mark St. John, who was the head of our investor relations. And I was sat outside. He's a very, very tall, charismatic American, and being the nosy, I use the word curious, but really I'm nosy. And he would use all the, he would talk about our investors and the funds we were raising and what he wanted to do. And I was just listening, and I would just ask him questions. And then he'd say, hey, do you want to come to the meeting? So he was very, very influential to me because he didn't put me in a box. I think you can be typecast as a lawyer that you just do this certain legal thing that someone presumes you do. And he never did that. And it was very much a partnership, a business partnership of getting great things done together. And he also would help me see, I think the great thing a mentor or someone you look up to does is they help you see what you might not necessarily see in yourself. They push you forward, they champion you, they tell you when you're a bit off course and come back on course again, and the opportunities that are there. So he was a great role model for me, and a great proponent of promoting good people, whatever gender you are.
Yeah. For me as well, I mean, two people stand out in my career, neither of whom are women. One is Jason Glover, who's been the head of the team I work in since I began my career over 15 years ago. And, he comes across, a lot of people know him in the industry, comes across as somebody who's very vocal, a larger than life character. But I think what people don't see is the incredible support and loyalty that he has to the people that he believes in behind the scenes. And that really came through from the very beginning. So I remember my very first review as a newly qualified being told that I was doing quite well, and had I thought about the future, and did I want to be a partner? And at that point, I just shrugged my shoulders and said, I haven't really thought about it. But it was having somebody there who constantly monitored my career, made sure I knew what opportunities were available, pushed me in the direction of taking those opportunities, and, pushing me forward and helping me realize potential, I suppose. And just having someone like that, I think, in your team, whether they're male or female, whoever they are, who is looking out for your best interests and really looking to push you forward to help you achieve your potential is key. And then the other person I'd mention is actually Simon Creswell, who's the General Counsel at Apax. And he's somebody that I worked very closely during my secondment and have done ever since. And that is a real professional mentor. I think he's one of the best lawyers I've met. He always spots the real issues. He always makes the right decision. He's very effective at handling himself. And having somebody who I look up to professionally means that his insights and guidance on my career and how to handle tricky situations or position myself is something that I really value. So I guess the lesson from all of that is that, your mentor can be anyone. You've just got to identify something in them that you connect with, and mutual respect.
And on that, what advice, Seema, would you give to someone that is looking for a mentor?
So to me, I think it's important both to find the right mentor and also to be a good mentee, actually. So in terms of finding a mentor, I think, like I said, you need to look for somebody that you identify with or look up to. And that can be for any reason. It could be somebody that you really aspire to be like professionally. It could be somebody whose personal circumstances are similar to yours, somebody who has a similar personality style to yours that you feel you can identify with. But I think the best mentoring relationships are built out of a real genuine connection and mutual respect on both sides. And so, in terms of being a good mentee, I think, you need to earn that respect from your mentor and show genuine interest, follow up on the advice that they give you, and really show that you're listening and taking it all on board.
Absolutely. And Lauren, how have you gone about building your own network over the years?
It's actually a super interesting question. I'm going to be really honest. I think for many years I didn't, because in this role, I'm so privileged. Like, generally speaking, people are very attracted to wanting to work with my business. I could, in a normal world, have breakfast, lunch, and dinner and coffee out every day. And so I haven't had to be, I've been more reactive than proactive. But really recently, this is why it's an interesting question. Very recently, I have switched up this, and I now have what I call Connection Wednesday. And we run our investment committee on Wednesday, so I tend to have more diary space. And Seema and I just caught up the other day. I'm proactively reaching out and saying, hey, let's connect. And I just think we're at this tipping point, I think, which is really important to get right now. A lot of us are homeschooling. Life is really difficult. We're wondering what life looks like post-pandemic life. We're all very busy at work as well, and most of us in the city, thankfully, and trying to get it done. So I've changed tact, and I'm really enjoying it. Really, every call is wonderful, and I feel like everyone just is seeking connection right now, and to support their network and to build it up, because I think really business is about great relationships. And they don't just happen from one coffee once a year. They happen from building that rapport and connection and respect with each other. And actually right now, I don't think I necessarily have a mentor, but I'll be looking for someone like, and someone who's a little higher up the mountain and says, here, take my hand, I'll help you along. I've been through this path. And we can be that to other people, Seema, and I really enjoy it. But I think that's part of networking too, is seeing what I can learn from other people as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And have you found it's kind of like a conscious or unconscious way of building your own network, Seema, or is it just, again, has it happened organically?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Lauren. I mean, I'm not able to give the conventional answer. I'm not on LinkedIn. I'm not on social media. Don't attend networking events. But I've just always found that the strongest way to build a network is to create meaningful relationships with the people that I encounter. So whether that's, current colleagues, former colleagues, clients, former clients, lawyers or advisors at other firms who are working on the same transaction, basically people that I end up working with or across from and can have a meaningful encounter with, and that develops into a much more fruitful relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you never know when someone's going to come across your life again. It's super interesting. And so I think not being stuck in law, speaking to the accountancy world or the auditor world, and because we all share the same challenges or opportunities, there's a similarity. It's just, we happen to focus on law, Seema. So I think that's really important too, is don't box yourself into just networking within the law.
Yeah, and sometimes having a different perspective is so refreshing as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess kind of final question, and that's to do with advice. If there is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self, what would it be? And perhaps we can start with you, Seema.
Well, I would give all sorts of advice to my younger self, but I think my key piece of advice to women who are coming through the profession is actually to see being a woman as a strength and an advantage rather than trying to fit with the male stereotype. I think it's so important that we all recognize the value that a different perspective can bring to the table. I think we can see issues that men can't. We can approach things differently from the sea of suits in the room. And that different dimension, I think, is going to be increasingly valuable as, business diversifies and the lawyers that need to advise those businesses need to keep up. And, I think it's really important for us all to remember that you don't need to be the loudest person in the room to be the most effective. Sometimes the softly spoken, more collaborative approach yields better results. And I think that naturally plays to a lot of women's strengths.
And what about you, Lauren?
I think I have two, which is linked. Be yourself and trust yourself. Really be yourself, like learn who you are, learn what your strengths are, go out and strengthen them. I personally love personal development, so I like learning about how to communicate a bit better or do things better. So be yourself, whatever that is for you, and then trust yourself. And I think as lawyers, we're trained to have these amazing brains and our intellect, but what about our intuition, and what about really trusting ourselves to make decisions? And you don't need to go out and get someone else to agree with you and have a million opinions that agree with you. If you trust yourself and you're doing the right thing and you think it's for the best good of everyone, just go ahead and do it. So yeah, that's the advice I'd give my younger self. I'm still learning it. Yeah.
Well, that's super interesting. Thank you so much, both of you. That's just really interesting. I'm sure it'll be super useful to all lawyers at all levels. If you would like to feature in a future episode, please get in touch. And thank you all for joining, and see you at our next Diversity Leadership episode.